I will also talk about the floods. Since flood events in Slovenia are becoming more frequent recently, and also the intensity of flood events are growing. In my today's talk, I would like to stress the importance of cooperation of different participants when fighting against floods. Especially, I would like to stress a role of protection, rescue, and relief forces. That is why this presentation was prepared together with the Firefighting Association of Slovenia. I will present a case study on River Drava. As we know, in last 7 years, we were victims of 3 flood or high water events, and during this time also some structural measures were performed, and at the end I will show short analysis what is the impact of these structural measures, especially on the work and on the activities of the rescue forces. Flood events are a consequence of the extreme weather conditions, and the flood risk in general is a function of unconnected unknowns, which is a flood hazard. This is mainly caused by natural phenomena, and we do not have a lot of influence what to do against that, because it's solely natural. On the other hand, the flood vulnerability, which is a consequence of a human activity and a presence, we do have some impact on that. We can prepare ourselves and we can make some prevention measures to lower the flood risk. However, the flood risk management aims to reduce the likelihood and also the impact of a flood, and it contains following elements. In the first place, prevention, preparedness, preparation. In this part, it's really important that we perform some constructional measures, so we do not construct buildings and industry in the flood-prone areas. And then when the flood comes, of course, the response and intervention is really important. And before that, of course, the informing of the inhabitants and the population what to do in case when the flood occurs, and of course, how to act. And then in the last part, the recovery, recondition, and reconstruction. And we can see in all these steps, the rescue forces play the main role. In the flood risk, we can fight with the flood protection measures. In general, we can talk about the structural and non-structural flood protection measures. For example, the structural measures are the high water embankments or high water containers, also the protection walls. On the other hand, the non-structural measures are, for example, efficient forecasting of floods and, of course, determination of flood risk area, like shown in these cases. The implementation of flood protection measures on the state level in Slovenia is in hand of the Ministry of Environment and Spatial Planning and the Slovenian Agency of Environment and Slovenian Water Agency, and beside that, the administration of the Republic of Slovenia for civil protection and disaster relief, which is also taking care for the protection, rescue, and relief forces. These are the capabilities of the state, local communities, as well as companies, institutes, and other organizations in the case of natural or other disasters. We can see that these forces in Slovenia are developed, mainly of the the volunteer units, then the professional units, and the duty units. And as we can see in this graph, the majority of these forces are representing the volunteer units. These are organized in humanitarian organizations, and in Slovenia, these are mainly the volunteer firefighters organizations. Just a few numbers. At the moment, we have more than 1,300 volunteer firefighting organizations in Slovenia, and at this moment, we have more than 50,000 people who are ready to go to interventions in event or natural or other diseases. This is really a phenomenon in Slovenia, and all other European countries would like to have a system as we have. So this is something we should really be proud about. The case study I would like to show is a section of River Drava. This is between the Maribor and Ptuj. As you know, probably the channel in this part is splitted in the natural channel and the channel which is for the needs of hydropower plant Zlatoličje. And the artificial channel, there can flow the discharge up to 500 cubic meters per second, and the rest of the water then is going into the natural channel. So there are some problems when the discharge of Drava is really high, when it exceeds more than 1,000 cubic meters per second, and there we have some residential areas which could and can be flooded. This is especially in the area of Dogoše and Duplek. This figure also shows the flooded area for a 100-year event, and we can see several houses would be flooded if this would happen. In 2015, some structural measures were performed. A high water embankment was built in the area of Duplek. This is the length of this embankment is more than 5 kilometers, and in the area of Dogoše, high water protection wall as well as high water embankment were built. The length of this measure is more than 2 kilometers, and as we can see on this figure, where of course the computational flooded area is shown, some areas are protected in case of 100-year flood. And maybe another one, here we have a figure where the area in Dogoše is presented, here without the protection measure, and here when the protection measure is performed, and we can see a lot of houses and a lot of the whole residential area is now safe. So we did have some, as I mentioned already, some flood events or high water events on River Drava. Maybe a lot of you will remember the floods in 2012 in November. The discharge of River Drava at that time, it was more than 3,000 cubic meters per second. A lot of residential areas, sport objects were flooded. And of course, the whole area of Duplek was really strongly flooded. Not only in this area, actually the area around the whole Drava in Slovenia was really damaged bad. And of course, in this case, when the flood comes, as I mentioned, it is crucial to have efficient rescue service. And if we see the statistics, which I get from the rescue service in Maribor, at that time a lot of volunteer firefighters mainly were on the terrain and were helping and were fighting against the flood, together, of course, in cooperation also with some other professional units. Then another high water event on Drava River was in 2014. The memory from the 2012 was still very alive. And this was good because this part of prevention and preparedness was really better. So a lot of people, they took care about the protection measures by themselves, and of course the forces, the rescue forces, also helped with flood bags and of course protection walls. So the damage in this year was not that bad, and also the discharge was really not that high as in 2012. And then another high water event in October 2018. The discharge on the natural channel of River Drava was more than 1,300 cubic meters per second. All the rescue forces were prepared about the big flood, and of course all the people were also really good prepared, so no huge damage was caused. So some prevention measures as well were performed, like flood warning, of course, flood bags, protection walls, and so on. And here is the statistics of volunteer firefighters, but this is for the area of Duplek, which were active at that time. We can see the number is really smaller than, for example, in 2012. However, when we look at the reports of the rescue services, we still can see that the cooperation between the firefighters on, in general, the protection, rescue and relief forces is not good. But the flood risk is not completely eliminated. Some problems moved to another places, which we also can see out of these reports. And I don't know if the experts are aware of that already. So also, on the other hand, some agriculture areas are now flooded more frequently. Just for an example, the people who are living at the Drava, they can say that before the high water embankment in Duplek, the Drava starts to flood the areas at the discharge around 1,500 cubic meters per second, and now after the high water embankment was built, the Drava starts to flood the areas at the discharge 1,200 cubic meters per second. So this is a difference of 300 cubic meters per second. So it's we can still find out that collaboration between the relevant government authorities and experts is indispensable, and of course for sufficient and successful flood protection along the Drava River, the transboundary cooperation is indispensable, since the Drava River is flowing through through more countries. So our forum statement would be that the flood risk can be reduced with structural measures, but cannot be eliminated completely. Therefore, the efficiency of flood risk management is depending on the activities of protection, rescue and relief forces. Thank you very much.
Thank you.